This is 2013, and the city of Muleshoe is celebrating 100 years of existence this year. And we're talking here in Muleshoe with people who live here still, but who have relatives who were the true pioneers of Muleshoe. And the Muleshoe Chamber of Commerce and Agriculture, in cooperation with Randall CPA firm, bringing you this interview with Maurine Hooten, the farmer Maurine Wilterding, and definitely the Wilterding and the Head families both were pioneers of this community. Maurine, now your daddy's family came here what year?
In 1908.
And your grandfather and grandmother, what were their names, the Wilterding?
W.M. and Laura Wilterding. But now Laura died when my daddy was only 7 years old.
Uh-huh.
And he was raised by the great aunts, his aunt and grandmother and grandfather.
And who were they?
John and Emma Wilterding, and his aunt was Dottie Wilterding. Mm-hmm. That you would remember from years past. Yeah.
And so now, they came here from where?
From Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Yes.
So was that where your father, Mervin, was actually born?
Yes.
In Nebraska?
Yes. Daddy was born in Lincoln, Nebraska.
In Lincoln, Nebraska. Now, why did the family come to Muleshoe and the Muleshoe area, really?
His daddy and a cousin came down here to look at land and decided they wanted to trade the land in Nebraska for the land here in Bailey County, which was not a county at that time. Uh-huh. But they went back to Nebraska and talked their dad, John, into joining them in doing that.
Uh-huh. And so how did they actually come from Nebraska when they moved?
On the train to Bovina.
Only to Bovina, because really there wasn't a Muleshoe when they came.
No, there was not. The railroad track went through Bovina. Uh-huh. I've forgotten the name of the railroad. But anyway, from there they were on wagons. And they had their cattle, their horses, household goods, and family all on the train.
And so I wonder how long it took them to come. Now, they didn't really come to Muleshoe because there wasn't a Muleshoe at that time. They went to where?
To Bovina and came across from there to the land that they had traded for in the northern part of Bailey County.
And so would that be the YL area, or was it actually YL at that time?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay. So how long?
That's what it would be.
Now. Uh-huh. And so how long did it take them, wonder, to come with all of the wagons, the cattle, the horses, etc., and the family from Bovina to YL?
You know, I don't know that I ever heard a comment on how many days or how long. I do remember that the men rode in the cattle cars with the livestock.
Oh, really?
Well, that was
they had to be fed.
All of this kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
And that would be a trip in those days, especially on the train, Nebraska to Texas.
Yeah. It really was. You know, they had to be tired.
Right. And so was this land, there wasn't irrigation at that time. Was it?
Just dry land and grassland. And I understand from Aunt Dot, it was just beautiful, beautiful grassland. I think probably not like the Kansas tall grass that they talk about, but on that order.
And there weren't many people here either.
Oh, no. No. Very few families then. Mm-hmm. I know they said they lived for 2 weeks. I think it was the schoolhouse at Bovina, or no, it may have, I'm not sure on that, before their house was finished. And they moved in it before it was finished because the women hung carpet strips and whatever they could find in the doorways. Yes, just
Without any
doors. Yes. Can you imagine?
No, I can't. I really can't. We have it really good, don't we? We've been blessed.
Oh, don't we though?
And so now that house from Muleshoe, where would it have been? How far out? In what directions?
3 miles east, like on the Plainview Highway, and then 8 miles north.
Okay. And right on that YL
Yes,
road,
yes, right on that.
And so do you still own any part of that land?
Well, Marshall owns that part of land.
Yeah, Marshall Head.
Marshall Head, excuse me.
So he is your first cousin, double first cousin.
Double first cousin, right.
Because your mother and daddy married brothers and sisters.
That's right.
And so now you were saying Marshall Head does what?
He has that land, is farming that.
Okay. So
and of course that's a different house
sure.
than the first one. And then the next house they built in 47, I believe, and it has burned. So it's not there.
Well, now, so when they came here, were there schools already established or not?
No, I don't think so at that time. And I remember as just a little girl coming to town very seldom, once in a while on Saturdays. And so by the time I'm remembering, there were a few stores and a filling station or two, and but dirt streets.
Really?
I do not.
In Muleshoe, dirt streets.
I don't remember any paved ones at that time. But that's been a long time ago, Maggie.
And so now your daddy and his parents came. And how old was your daddy when he came?
4.
He was 4 years old. And now, did Dottie, his aunt, come?
She came at that time.
At that time. Now, also Mildred.
Yes.
His sister, Mildred, who later became head.
That's right. But my granddad and grandmother be John and Emma Wilterding, and their son Will and his wife Laura, which is my grandparents, and the 2 children, Mervin and Mildred, were the ones that came then.
Originally. And so you're not only your grandparents, but your great-grandparents came.
Right.
And your daddy.
Right.
Okay. And so then when your daddy went to school, where did he go?
He went, YL had been established by then.
Okay.
And he went to school there 3 years, 3 or 4. And I can remember him talking about riding the horse to school.
Sure.
And talking about the snow being so deep that to go to the barn to feed the cattle, he had to walk over fences. Can you imagine? Of course, a lot of that was drifting.
Sure. We had plenty of wind for it to drift.
We did.
Even back in that time. Right. And so where did they go to church?
Well, they began at the Old Hurley Church.
Now, where was Old Hurley?
To the west of the present-day Muleshoe.
To the west.
And the first one was just to the north on 214.
Okay, that was New Hurley? Or was it Old Hurley?
No, the Old Hurley was over close to Progress in that area.
Okay.
The New Hurley was this other one.
Okay.
But
on 214.
Right.
Okay.
I think that's right.
Okay.
They went to, but as soon as there was a building in the YL area, they went to church there, Sunday school and church where they lived, But it's always been the Methodist church, the only Methodist church, So it's just moved locations.
Right. I understand that. So now, your Head family, now where did they come from and when did they come? This would be your mother's family.
I think it was 1925 when her family came through here in a covered wagon on their way to Kansas.
Where were they coming from?
From Dunn and Brownfield. Dunn down by Snyder, south of Snyder.
And they came up
And why, I don't know. But that's how she and Daddy met. And then they corresponded.
They went on.
Oh, yes, yes. They'd gone on. And Daddy went up to get Mother in December of 25 in a new Ford 25. What would it be in 25? A little coupe. And they married.
And in Kansas. Did they marry in Kansas?
Yes.
Now, who were her parents?
J.J. Head. J.J. and Molly.
Did they ever come to Bailey County or Muleshoe?
Oh, yes. Yes, they lived out on the farm with us. Different house. But, I was a teenager. Or a little girl. I was a little girl.
When they came?
Yes.
And so
they lived here until she died in 41, and then they lived here until he died in 45.
So now you were talking about on the farm they came to. Now, first of all, where did Mervin bring his bride, May, to?
To the land that they had at the time, half a mile north of there.
And so was that where you grew up?
Yes.
And
yes.
You grew up in that
That's
house.
where I grew up. I was born in that house.
You were born in that
yes.
house. And so now I'm sure that your grandparents, your great-grandparents, and your daddy all were farmers?
Well, interesting. My great-granddad was a carpenter.
Oh, really?
And my granddad and his brother, Uncle Harry,
his wife's name was?
Leota. Was the first school teacher in Bailey County. They did carpenter work with him, but my granddad, Will, farmed and had cattle. He liked the cattle.
So, but they all lived, even Harry and Leota, out in the YL
That's
community.
Right.
And so now, the house that you grew up in, were born in, is it still standing?
Yes, it's still there.
And where is it specifically located?
8.5 miles north on the YL Road.
Right on the road.
It's right on the road, and I think about 3/10 of an acre is in Palmer County. So the pavement ends, beyond the house.
Right beyond the house it ends. And so now, so in your family, now wait, back to your grandparents, Wilterdings. Did they have any other children that were born after they came here?
My granddad, no. He never remarried.
Okay, so there was just Mildred and Mervin. Right. Now, had there been another child in that family?
Yes. Yes, a little boy that died in between Daddy and Aunt Mildred.
And so that child was already deceased when they came here and had, I guess, been buried back in Nebraska?
In Nebraska, which is where my granddad and grandmother's buried.
So they were all taken back to Nebraska and buried?
Not my great-grandparents.
Oh, really?
No. The great-grandfather, John, got sick and was taken to Plainview to the doctor. There was no doctor here. He died over there, and before he died, he said, "Don't you take time to take me back to Bailey County. Bury me out here."
Really?
Which they did. So Grandma Emma was taken to Plainview. And then when Aunt Dot died, we took her to Plainview with her mother and dad. Yeah.
Now, to your parents' family. Now, besides you, who were the children in that family?
Well, Lona Embry is the oldest.
And she lives in Lubbock.
In Lubbock now, and is very happy there. Reese lives in Tulia. And, of course, we're here, and my younger sister, Luella, lived in Hawaii when she died.
And so Lona lived here, though. She was Miss Calvin Embry until just a few years ago.
4 years, 4, maybe 5.
At the most.
At the most, right.
Now, your grandfather, W.M. Wilterding, Was he instrumental in any way in helping actually the county be organized?
Yes, he told us about going to Dimmitt, and it was so muddy and all this kind of thing, and getting the records and getting them out of Dimmitt. I wish I could remember the full story, but getting them out of Dimmitt so they could get back here before a certain time and get the county organized in 1918. And he became the first county judge then in January.
So was he elected, do you think?
Yes, yes.
There was an election held.
Yes.
Well, now, I had in my mind, and please correct me, thinking that they actually stole these papers.
Oh, I think that's what it amounted to. Yes, I think so.
There was a Mr. Elrod who was here not long ago at Rotary, and I think he remembered as a child the men coming in with these documents, and he said there were guns that he remembered. Some of them were carrying or around where we would think the courthouse square is today.
Well, the courthouse, the first one, was where the Masonic Lodge building is.
Really?
Yes. Yes, and while and then during that time he got the courthouse. They got the courthouse built. But yes, I think all that's very true. Don't we wish we had it all written down?
Yes.
As it did happen. Yes.
The real story. Now, that was Castro County that we were in.
Isn't it?
In Dimmitt. So, aren't we glad that we're not in Castro? We're in Bailey. Now, wonder why, I know who it's named for, Bailey County, but wonder why they decided on that particular name. Did you ever hear them say?
No.
And now, who was Mr. Bailey?
Well, he was a fighter at the Alamo.
Right,
And, well, I don't know why they chose him.
That would be interesting.
Yes, it would, wouldn't it?
So now the courthouse that we know today is old, but it wasn't there when it was where, let's see, that would be West 2nd and Avenue ABC. Right.
I believe so. Catty corner from the courthouse northwest corner. Yes.
And so who built the Bailey County Courthouse as we know it today?
I don't know that I know. No.
Wonder who drew up the plans or anything. Do you know?
I have no.
No idea.
I think that Grandpa was instrumental in all that, but do you suppose Judge Glenn Williams would have some of that information? Just in the past county, the county judge, his information.
Sure, he might. And now, so where did you go to school?
I went to YL through the 8th grade. And then it was consolidated, and we came into Muleshoe. And then I went to college, McMurray University in Abilene.
And so when you were growing up out in the YL community, how did you get to school at YL?
On a bus.
So there was a school bus?
Well, the first I remember was a bus, but very different to these. That here,
sure.
The seats were running down the center and along the side of the bus.
Oh, really?
With the exhaust pipe under the center seat. We burned many holes in shoes. I remember that. Trying to keep toes warm. A girl that was in school rode the bus with me. In fact, Vivian White and I have talked about it, and how we hated those brown stockings, we had to wear. And we'd roll those down and put our feet at the exhaust pipe and get burned.
Keep them warmer, though.
Oh, my, yes.
Especially when it snowed and was so those northerners would blow in. Yeah.
Well, and the school was not heated like it is today. One entire room was devoted to a furnace, with the coal and all of that.
And so you said now Leota was the teacher?
Teacher in Bailey County.
And was that at YL? Or do you know?
I don't know, but I bet it was too.
There was also a school named Liberty.
Well, it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
Yes, same thing. So I'm assuming it was out there. If not there, it'd be Muleshoe. But Aunt Leota's has one child still living.
Really?
Evelyn. She's a Harmon. She lives in Clovis. I see her very regularly.
Really?
Yes, she just had her 96th birthday.
Oh, my goodness.
It's attack.
Oh, how
And a
marvelous.
delight to visit with.
And now they had a son, Jack.
Yes, and he was my age.
Oh, he was?
Yes, we were in school together.
And you remember the story about Jim Allison, who was Ethel and Gerald. Thank you. I went blank there. And son, the oldest son, that he and Jack worked together in the space program.
That's right. They surely did.
Isn't that
Now,
something?
Jack died just this year.
Oh, he did.
Yes. But isn't that interesting at how
Yes, yes.
it all goes around, doesn't it?
And they were both Muleshoe High School
Graduates. And then worked in Iran.
Oh,
Or
both
Jack
of
did.
them?
I'm thinking both maybe did. I'm not sure.
Well, and you know, Jim Allison, I believe he died this year too.
Yes, he did, and he's the one that was with Jack in Iran.
Okay.
I think so.
And so now, also another thing that was important in those early days was county school superintendents. Yes. And so, did any of your family hold that position?
Not superintendents. Daddy was on the school board a lot of years out there.
And so now, in the Methodist Church, some of the Wilterdings were actual charter members of the church here now, First United Methodist Church in Muleshoe. And who were those charter members?
Grandma and Grandpa, John and Emma.
Okay.
My grandfather, Will W. and Dottie. They were all charter members. Aunt Dot played the organ. And, well, you know, there weren't enough people. Everybody did everything.
It seemed like I remember that she told my mother in writing a history for the cornerstone of that church back in the mid-50s that there some kind of a snake got in the organ.
Yes, it did. But I can't remember the story of it. Do you?
It rattled.
Well, I'm sure it did. Don't you know it startled her?
Oh.
But I don't remember the details of that.
And so that church that actually was the original church, did just the Methodists go to it?
Now, at Hurley, I think so. Now, when the congregation moved to the YL church, it was a Union Methodist and Baptist. I don't remember going to anything but a Methodist and Baptist. And we went every Sunday to both. We went to the revivals. Oh, no. We had Mother cooked chicken for the Baptist preacher just like she did for the Methodist preacher.
And so it was sort of a congregational church.
Oh, yes.
But then it finally was brought into Muleshoe.
Yes. Yes.
And then it became definitely a Methodist church.
Well, no, it was still Methodist, but it became the separate Methodist, United Methodist Church. Well, Methodist in Muleshoe. The Baptists had their own buildings, and that was the only separation part of it.
I see.
Yeah.
Now, when you were growing up out at YL, did you work on the farm?
Oh, my, yes, Megan. Oh, yes. We chopped cotton, and we didn't let out school to pick cotton, but we did after school and Saturdays, yes. But, yes, we gathered corn with the horses pulling the wagon, and you threw the ears up on it, and Daddy ground them, the corn, for feed. We gathered maize the same way, cutting it off the stalk. And Luella and I, being the younger ones, got to rest and ride the wagon once in a while, but you had to keep up. So, But Daddy always worked with us. We never really minded it. Now I understand why he would say, well, now we're going to sit down and rest a while when we'd get to the end of the row. Or at noontime, we had to lie down and rest. Well, now I know why. Daddy needed to rest. Yes.
It was hard work.
Well, yes, it was hard work.
A tractor that's air conditioned or heated with all kinds of GPS.
Right. No, and when we got electricity, that was just a major milestone. And Mother got a Maytag washer. We used rubboard and out in the yard.
Can you explain what a rubboard looked like?
Oh, I can show you one.
Oh, well, do that.
Well, I can't find it right now, but I do have the coal lamp that we kids studied by.
Because you had no electricity.
Oh, no. And the churn, we made many a pound of butter with that churn. And
you
that was
this up and down.
That's right, just like that. And it's wonderful butter.
Can't buy it like that in the store.
Not really, can we?
And now, the coal oil, where would your mother and daddy buy the coal oil to go in the lamp?
Well, when I was growing up, he came to Muleshoe to buy coal oil, yes. Can you buy coal oil today? I think probably so, but I don't know.
Not in the grocery store.
The lamp part itself is the original. I have broken a globe, so the globe is newer.
And, of course, that was before electricity. Do you remember when electricity came to the YL community?
Seems to me we got electricity in 1941.
And were you young or in high school?
Well, I was 11. I was born in 1930.
And so you studied by this for a long time.
We did.
And Lona certainly did.
Oh, all of us. We had a table probably twice as big as this around. And that lamp. But I can recall when we got a Aladdin lamp. Do you know what those were?
No.
Well, it was a taller lamp than this and had a wick in it it was slightly different. Gave much more light. You thought you were really uptown then.
And now, were you able to get any newspapers, magazines, or news in any way?
I don't remember ever having newspapers until I was at, I suppose, high school. I just don't remember when that. But I do remember this about the newspapers. We could not read the funnies on Sunday. Now, you could during the week.
Really?
Yes, there were several things that we didn't. That was God's day of rest, and you didn't do some of these other things.
That's one of the 10 Commandments.
That's right. Right.
So, what do you remember else besides don't read the funnies on Sunday?
But I don't know why I remember that, because we did not. I don't remember daily papers at all. And I don't remember getting magazines. I do remember putting the square that said 25 pounds or 50 pounds of ice that we wanted, putting that cardboard in the window so the iceman would know how much ice to leave us.
Oh, really? And so you just put that out in your front door window or your window at the front
of the road.
Oh, next to the road.
The window that faced the road, so the iceman could see how much to bring you.
And he came in from Muleshoe, right?
I had to have.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm sure he did. There was probably an ice house in Muleshoe.
But Mother would get a block of ice and keep in the ice box.
And it was really an ice box.
Oh, yes.
Not a refrigerator.
No.
Refrigerators run on electricity, and then the ice box ran on ice.
Well, I don't. What would they have been powered by to keep it? Maybe it was just the ice that kept it.
The ones I have seen were powered by ice. There was no other way to.
It's not.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah, it is. since we don't have the rub board, can't find the rub board, tell us what a rub board looked like.
Well, ours, and there are different sizes, but ours was probably 2 feet long and 12 inches wide. It had a plain board up at the top of it so you could put a bar of soap, which was lye soap that was homemade. And then below that was ridges, probably 18 inches of ridges, and it was on 2 legs. You propped that in the wash tub and elbow grease with that soap and your clothes rubbing on the corrugated part of it.
And there wasn't wash and wear.
No, they weren't wash and wear. They hung on the line and then you ironed with flat irons. And you know what that is.
Well, tell me.
It's flat with a handle on it that you can heat. And you heated it on the stove, on the stove. Now, grandmothers had the handle on it, which I have, but mothers had a removable handle. You could heat one iron while you ironed with the other, but use the same handle. It clipped into the other, and that got pretty fancy.
Oh, my. No electricity.
No, not then. Not then.
Oh, and they ironed beautifully, I think.
Oh, yes. My grandmother had taught me to iron. And I can remember I wasn't very big, but she didn't let me get by with leaving wrinkles. You ironed it properly.
And in the days when they were coming out from Kansas or in Nebraska, either one, they had a lot of lace, it seemed like, even on little boys' clothes.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
Little baby boys wore dresses.
Oh, yes.
You know.
I had my daddy's curls. They were down to his shoulders, and he was about 5 when they cut them. Cut them off. Yeah. And fancy little clothes that they made.
Yes. That almost everything was handmade.
Yes, it was.
For boys and girls.
Right.
And men and women.
Well, true. And not always on sewing machines. You know, yes, much of it was by hand.
And so now, we haven't talked very much about the Head family. Now, that was your mother's family.
Right.
And so now, did that grandfather, was he a farmer in Kansas?
Well, yes, but when they moved back here, he farmed some land then. And Mother's youngest brother until he went into the service in World War II. And then Mother's youngest sister, who died just this year in California. Now, she married a Hamblin that lived here.
And now, what was her name?
Lena. And another sister of Mother's, Helen, and Uncle Duritz, lived in Arkansas, moved to Arkansas. But she married Virgil Teague, and they lived in the Lasbuddy area several years.
And so how many children were in the Head family?
8, 4 boys and 4 girls.
Okay. And none of them except, well, of course, they're not the children, they're the grandchildren, but you and Marshall live here now, right?
Right. And I guess the only ones that are still here.
Okay. So your mother was a Head, and she married a Wilterding.
That's right.
And
my daddy.
Your daddy
was a Wilterding,
and
he married a Head. Brother and sister married brother and sister.
Okay. So Mildred Head married who?
My daddy. I mean, no. Mildred was Daddy's sister.
Yes.
And she married a Head, my mother's brother.
Oh, okay. Mildred Wilterding married Durwood Head.
Durwood Head.
Got it.
Yeah, there we are.
And my Head married Mervin Wilterding.
There you got it.
And so they're double first cousins.
That's right.
Now, that wasn't unusual at all. And one reason was because people didn't travel in those days. Right. There weren't the roads we have today. And you didn't go shopping or to the show, or there weren't shows, the theater was a thing to come, and their courting days.
That's right.
So
They
brothers and sisters married.
and it was community activities then. I mean, we went to the church building or school building. It was all in the same for Christmas programs and revivals and dinner on the ground. Any of those things, we did it all together. So that's how they met people in the community.
Now, tell us about your and Robert's family. And now several of them live still here in Muleshoe. So this would be of your great-grandparents' great-great-grandchildren, right, that live here.
I think that's right.
And even there have been great-great-great who have lived here.
Well, still do. Cade still lives here.
Okay.
See,
So now,
my great-granddad John and Emma is my great-granddad. Then Will was my granddad. Then my daddy. Then me. And Gary and his son Cade. So that's six generations.
That
and they have a little girl, so that's 7.
7 generations.
How about that?
Isn't that
Yes.
something?
Yes.
I bet no other family can do better than 7 generations.
7 generations.
In Muleshoe in 100 years.
Very few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet none. I'd have to think about
We'd have
it,
to
but
think,
yeah.
wouldn't we? Yes.
Okay, so now who else besides Gary and Holly live here? And then
Gayla.
Gayla.
Our daughter Gayla and Joe Gear.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you have one other son.
Larry and Wanda, have moved to Dallas and just doing fine and love it down there.
And so now Marshall, who is ahead. Now your double first cousin, he has children here.
Yes, they have a son that's still here, David. David and Belinda Head, yes. And they has 3 girls, and they live away from here.
So anyway, I think that is remarkable. Is there any memory that you have from your great-grandparents or your grandparents or your parents about the really early days that you think would be interesting to share with our listeners?
Oh, I think we've pretty well covered most of that. I remember with deep pleasure Aunt Dot and her teaching us Bible stories. Out at YL during revivals, we would sit under the trees, and Aunt Dot would lean up against the tree trunk and tell us Bible stories. And you don't forget all of those things. But growing up, we knelt to have prayer at night. Daddy read from the Bible, then we knelt, and Mother had the prayer.
Every night.
Every night. For years and years. There's some of those memories that you don't forget. Of course, I also remember the cold beds, too, in the wintertime, and Mother would heat something to wrap in towels, to put at our feet. And we didn't have bathrooms like we've got today. And
so you had outhouses.
Oh, yes, outhouses, and we used wash tubs for our baths, Yeah,
and now, where did the water come from? The well?
Yes, yes, we had a well.
So you had to draw the water in and bring it in?
Well, we had a windmill.
A windmill?
Yes, and a well house, and Daddy had a trough from the well house to the windmill, and that's where Mother kept butter and all that kind of thing cool. See,
really? Even in the summer, would that work?
It did better than in the house. And in the wintertime, when they butchered hogs or cattle, well, Daddy would hang it up in the tower of the windmill so the coyotes couldn't get to it, things like that. And they'd cure it, and there's a lot of memories like that. And
I bet she always had a garden.
Oh my, yes, yes.
And so you would can.
We canned some more. That we did. We didn't go to town to buy groceries. We went to the basement. Got our canned goods.
Because that's where they were stored.
That's right.
Now, what kind of things did she can?
Most of ours, well, beans, peas, corn, lots of corn. And, of course, we loved it when we got the electricity and deep freeze and could have the frozen corn.
Now, did she, of course, take it off the cob?
Oh, yes.
Before she, so that was a chore.
Well, oh, yes, but I still do it that way.
Do you?
Oh, yes. I still do it that way. We like it cut off and cooked and in the freezer. And, we didn't put it in jars at first. It was in tin cans.
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, yes. I remember when we first got jars, and you could screw that top on and pressure cooker.
Yes.
But, no, Daddy it was a canner, and you had to hook it on the step. He would put it on the top step of the basement, and there was some kind of thing. You bought the tin lids and the cans, but you put that lid on it, and then you turned the handle that would pinch that can and the lid together, and then you pressured it in the pressure cooker.
So now the cans that what did not the jars, the cans look like? Were they
just like our cans today without the labels on them?
Okay.
Just a metal tin can.
And did you buy that?
Yes.
And so how did you get a lid on it?
I don't remember how Daddy held it, but he had to get it on there right so that this would pinch it together, see?
Oh, that is interesting.
You'd never seen that.
No, I haven't seen that.
Well, I'm sorry I can't describe that any better.
No, you did fine. That's wonderful.
But it was a good life.
Oh,
It was a good life.
I can tell that.
And I loved the farm. I still love the farm.
And I have enjoyed going down memory lane with Maurine Wilterding Hooten. We are celebrating 100 years of existence of our community of Muleshoe this year. And her great-grandparents and grandparents and her father were certainly some of the very earliest pioneers here in Muleshoe and Bailey County. Thank you so much, Maureen.
You are most welcome. I've enjoyed this, Megan.
Me too. And this interview has been brought to you through the courtesy of Randall Field CPA firm and in cooperation with the Muleshoe Chamber of Commerce and Agriculture.